It's 1995, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The CIA is utterly convinced they're closing in on Fidel Castro's spies, yet they keep missing the mark. How? Because Castro fooled them for an entire generation. What went wrong? We think we read strangers like open books. But guess what? Those pages are mostly blank. Why do we keep falling for the same mistakes when talking to strangers? Stick around, you won't believe the cracks in that confidence. Malcolm Gladwell dives into how truth often fails us when meeting strangers. It's not just lies, it's a lot messier than that. The CIA thought they had solid intel on Fidel Castro's spy network, but for decades they couldn't crack the code. Castro's operatives were master deceivers, blending truth with subtle misdirection. One agent, Rolando Cubella, played the CIA like a fiddle, outwardly cooperative, inwardly loyal to Castro. This perfect deception wasn't about blatant lies. It was about controlling how strangers perceived reality, leaving the CIA stranded in assumptions. We tend to believe strangers because we assume transparency, that their face, tone, and body language honestly reveal their intentions. Imagine your mind as a security scanner expecting clear patterns, but instead, you get static. Gladwell calls this default to truth. We're wired to believe because suspicion is expensive, socially and cognitively. Yet, this automatic trust is a double-edged sword. It blinds us when faced with sophisticated deception. So what happens when truth itself becomes unreliable? Gladwell flips the script. Instead of strangers as open books, their coded messages we're ill-equipped to read. This insight isn't just about spies. It explains why Neville Chamberlain trusted Hitler's promises leading to disaster, or why we botch communication with people unlike ourselves. Truth, it turns out, is a fragile social currency we can't always count on. We think body language and eye contact reveal lies, right? Turns out, relying on these cues is like trying to read a foreign language with no dictionary, full of pitfalls. Amanda Knox's ordeal in Italy exploded partly because police interpreted her confused behavior and inconsistent eye contact as guilt. Yet these signals were stress signs, not deception. Knox's case reveals how easy it is to mistake nervousness, cultural differences, or trauma for lying. The world's watching, and our gut judging strangers through a flawed lens, one that criminal justice can't afford to trust blindly. Gladwell explains that interpreting body language is complex because cues aren't universal. Like dialect misheard in a bustling market, nervous habits or cultural norms create noise. The lie detector myth makes us overconfident, assuming shaky hands mean lying, when it might mean fear or exhaustion. Our brains crave simple heuristics, but honesty isn't always written on your face. The surprise, false positives, telling someone's lying when they're not, cause lasting harm. Innocent people get punished and trust frays in communities. It's a hard lesson. Looking for signs of deception doesn't fix misunderstandings, it often fuels them. We need new tools to listen to strangers without twisting their signals into mistrust. Our minds cling to believing strangers by default. Sounds naive? Actually, it's evolution's way of keeping us social. Here's how that plays out and falls apart. Sylvia Plath's heartbreaking suicide wasn't just a private tragedy, it exposes the cost of misreading intimate strangers. Those close to her misinterpreted signs, believing silence meant stability, masking her deep despair. Here, defaulting to truth meant missing urgent calls for help. Gladwell unpacks how our natural trust defaults can blind us even to people we think we know best. The principle is simple. Suspicion demands mental energy, social friction, and risks isolation. Our brains evolved to reduce these costs, assuming honesty unless proven otherwise. Imagine your brain running a social network through a filter set to optimistic. It keeps relationships running smooth, but leaves you vulnerable to betrayal and misunderstanding. The shocker, this default isn't just idealistic. It explains rising campus sexual assaults. Victims' reports often clash with our trust biases, making it harder to believe and act. Trust is vital, but falls short when we can't decode stranger behavior accurately. Gladwell's insight pushes us to rethink how and when trust is given, especially where stakes are highest. Gladwell shows how mismatched signals between strangers don't mean deception. Sometimes, it's just culture, context, or assumptions gone haywire. Jerry Sandusky, Penn State's assistant coach, was the last person anyone suspected of predatory behavior until survivors' voices broke through. The mismatch? People's trust in his affable public persona blinded communities. Gladwell unpacks how powerful individuals manipulate social scripts so well, their true intentions stay hidden. It's chilling to realize we mistake familiar warmth for safety. Think about speaking two dialects of the same language and misunderstanding tones or slang. Behavioral codes, what signals mean, aren't universal between groups. Gladwell likens this to a dance where partners don't know the steps, misreading each other and causing chaos. We expect transparency, but strangers often bring different rules to the table. The payoff here is recognizing that smarter listening means questioning our assumptions before judging others. Instead of forcing strangers into our interpretive boxes, we can learn to notice when meanings diverge and pause. This opens the door to empathy, clarity, and safer interactions. After unraveling the myths, Gladwell offers a path forward. Changing how we meet strangers can save lives and sanity. Sandra Bland's traffic stop escalated over a misunderstood encounter with police in Texas. What could have been a simple release spiraled into tragedy because assumptions ruled, both by officers and Bland herself. Gladwell shows how dangerous it is to trust that strangers share your interpretation of a moment. It's a brutal reminder. Miscommunication with strangers can be deadly. Here's the shift: embracing ignorance about strangers instead of defaulting to truth. It's like meeting someone in a fog and admitting you don't see clearly rather than filling gaps with hopeful guesses. Recognizing how little we know can prepare us for caution, curiosity, and respect, rather than overconfidence that leads to disaster. The takeaway: the next time you meet a stranger, slow down your assumptions and ask questions with humility. Don't expect honesty or transparency, expect difference. That simple change in mindset can prevent misunderstandings, build real connection, and keep you and others safer. Remember that CIA office in Cambridge, locked in blind trust and mistaken signals? That's the trap we all fall into with strangers, assuming transparency when it's often smoke and mirrors. Gladwell's journey teaches us to acknowledge how little we actually know and to meet strangers with a mix of trust, curiosity, and humility. Next time you meet someone unfamiliar, pause, resist the pull of default assumptions, and listen deeper. It's not about becoming suspicious, it's about becoming wiser. Try this. Next conversation, ask one simple question not to judge, but to understand. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.